Good evening, sweetheart. It's Maggie. Come sit with me. Let's make this night a gentler one. The lamp is already on tonight. That familiar yellow glow. The one that never surprises me anymore. Only welcomes me. I'm sitting at the small table again. The same chair. The same place my hands seem to remember, even before I do. The cup of tea rests near my palms. Chamomile. Not too hot now. Just warm enough to feel honest. Outside, the night is quiet. No rain, no hurry. Just the slow breath of January holding itself together. I wasn't thinking of anything in particular. Not the past, not the future. Just letting the room be what it is. And then I noticed it. A shadow. Not sharp, not dramatic. Just a soft shape moving gently along the wall near the window. It came from the garden, from the old tree that's been standing there longer than I've lived in this house. The branches must have shifted slightly, just enough. The shadow stretched across the wall and stopped. I didn't move. I didn't blink right away either. There was something about the way it rested there, not demanding attention, not asking to be named, just present. The shadow reminded me of something before it reminded me of someone. That happens sometimes. Memory doesn't always knock with a face. Sometimes it arrives as a shape, a temperature, a way the light leans. I wrap my hands around the cup a little tighter, not because I was cold, because the moment asked me to stay. The shadow wasn't still. Not completely. It moved the way breathing moves, barely noticeable unless you're paying attention. And I was paying attention. At my age, you learn to listen for the quiet things. They tend to tell the truth first. Lily shifted at my feet, just enough to remind me I wasn't alone in the room. She didn't look up, didn't feel the need to check on me. She trusts nights like this. I envy that sometimes. The shadow lengthened slightly, then softened again, as if it were deciding how much of itself to show. And suddenly, without warning, my chest did that familiar, gentle tightening. Not pain, not sadness, recognition. It felt like standing in a room you haven't entered in years, and realizing your body remembers it before your mind does. I didn't say his name. Not yet. I didn't need to. The shadow hadn't asked for that kind of honesty. I watched the way it leaned against the wall, the way the edges blurred instead of insisting on being clear. That softness, that refusal to be exact, it felt familiar. There was a time, long ago, when evenings carried that same quality, when presence didn't need words, when someone could sit nearby and the room would shape itself around that fact. I hadn't thought of that in a while, not consciously, but the shadow did. The tea had cooled another degree. I took a slow sip anyway. Some things don't need to be at their best to be comforting. I let the cup rest back on the table. The shadow stayed, not pressing closer, not retreating, just existing in that in-between space where memory and now briefly overlap. I realized then that this night wasn't here to take anything from me. It wasn't here to reopen wounds or pull me backward. It was simply offering a moment to notice what still lives quietly inside me. So I stayed seated, hands near the cup, feet grounded, breathing slow. I let the shadow be a shadow, and I let myself feel whatever it wanted to remind me of, without rushing ahead. The night had just begun to speak, and I was listening. The shadow didn't move away. It stayed where it was, as if it had found a comfortable place to rest. I watched it without staring. There's a difference. Staring demands answers. Watching allows them to arrive on their own. The light from the lamp held steady. It didn't flicker. It didn't change its mind. That steadiness felt important. I adjusted slightly in my chair, not to escape the moment, but to meet it more honestly. My knees protested softly. They always do. But even that felt familiar, like an old companion clearing its throat. The shadow stretched again, just a little, and the shape on the wall changed. That's when it happened. Not all at once, not dramatically, just a quiet overlap. The angle of that shadow, the way it curved near the corner, it reminded me of how he used to stand in the doorway of the kitchen, not facing me directly, just leaning, as if he didn't want to interrupt the room. I hadn't thought of that posture in years. Funny what memory keeps and what it lets go. I can't always remember dates anymore, but I remember how light fell across his shoulder. The tea warmed my palms again, or maybe my palms warmed the cup. It's hard to tell where comfort begins once you've been holding it long enough. I didn't feel sad. That surprised me. I expected sadness, or at least its shadow. But what I felt instead was something quieter, recognition without ache. There was a time when a memory like this would have caught me off guard, would have pulled me backward, made the room feel too big, the chair too empty. But tonight, the room stayed exactly the size it needed to be. Lily shifted again, stretching her paws before settling. She sighed in her sleep, a sound so content it made me smile without meaning to. I wondered briefly if he ever noticed shadows the way I do now. Back then, life moved faster. Evenings were for planning tomorrow instead of listening to tonight. The shadow softened at the edges, as if it were dissolving into the wall. Not disappearing, just becoming less certain. I realized something then. Memories don't stay sharp forever, and maybe that's mercy. They round themselves. They blur the places that used to hurt. They learn eventually how to sit quietly. I rested one hand flat on the table, felt the familiar grain beneath my palm. This table has heard more silence than conversation, and it's held both equally well. The shadow shifted once more, then settled again, like it had found what it came for. I didn't reach for it. I didn't name it out loud. Some memories don't need to be spoken to be honored. I stayed where I was, breathing, present, letting the night move gently around me. The shadow wasn't pulling me back. It was standing beside me, and that made all the difference. I reached for the cup again, lifting it slowly, careful not to disturb the quiet. The tea had cooled just enough, still warm, still kind. I took a small sip, letting it rest on my tongue before swallowing. Some evenings teach you not to rush what's already gentle. The shadow stayed with me, but it no longer asked for my attention. It simply existed. That felt familiar too. There were many moments like that with him. Quiet presences, shared rooms, no need to fill the air. I realized something then. What I missed wasn't the sound of his voice or the shape of his hands. It was the way silence felt less empty when someone else was breathing nearby. That kind of silence doesn't disappear when a person does. It just learns new places to rest. The lamp cast its circle of light faithfully, as it has every night. I've come to trust that circle. It doesn't promise more than it can give, just enough light to see what's close. I thought about how memory works, how it doesn't always return as pictures. Sometimes it comes back as posture, or temperature, or the way your shoulders relax without knowing why. Tonight, memory came back as permission to remember without reopening wounds, permission to sit with what was without wishing it were still here. I shifted my feet slightly, tucking them closer beneath the chair. The sound echoed softly, then faded, just like most things do when you let them. There was a time when I feared forgetting, feared that if memories softened, they meant less. But age teaches you differently. It teaches you that tenderness doesn't require sharpness. Lily's breathing deepened, slow and steady. Her presence anchored me to this moment. She trusts the night completely. I'm learning to do the same. The shadow on the wall grew fainter as the light outside changed. Not gone, just quieter. I didn't follow it with my eyes this time. I let it leave on its own terms. I rested my elbow on the table, my chin in my palm. This position, I've told you before, is where my thoughts tend to settle. It's where remembering feels safest. I spoke softly, not aloud, but inside myself, not to him, to the part of me that still knows how to love without clinging. I said thank you, not for the loss, but for what remained, the quiet strength, the ability to sit with memory without losing my footing. The room felt smaller again, in the best way, contained, held. I noticed how my breathing had slowed, how my shoulders had dropped, how the night no longer felt heavy. If you're listening tonight, sweetheart, and a shadow has ever surprised you with a memory you weren't expecting, I hope you know this. You don't have to push it away. You don't have to invite it closer either. Just let it sit. Memories, like shadows, only ask for light enough to be seen gently. And when they're ready, they'll soften, just like this night has. I stayed where I was, hands wrapped around the cup, the table steady beneath my elbows. There's comfort in not moving when the moment finally settles. The shadow was nearly gone now, dissolved into the softer amber of the lamp, not erased, just folded back into the wall, like memories often do when they realize you're no longer afraid of them. I took another sip of tea, not because I needed it, but because some rituals deserve to continue even after their purpose has passed. The warmth traveled slowly this time, down my chest, into that quiet place behind the ribs. I thought about how many nights I've sat exactly like this. Same chair, same table, same lamp, different versions of myself. There was a younger Maggie who thought memories were traps. She believed if she lingered too long, she'd never find her way back to the present. She didn't yet know that the present is sturdier than it looks. At 63, I understand something she didn't. Memory isn't a place you fall into. It's a place you visit and only stay as long as you choose. I adjusted the cup slightly, turning the handle away from my palm. Such a small movement, but small movements matter. They remind you that you're still here. The lamp hummed faintly, a sound I've grown fond of because it never surprises me. It's steady, dependable, much like the evenings themselves. I let my eyes drift to the edge of the table, where the wood is worn smooth from years of resting hands. This table has heard everything: joy, grief, silence, and it has never once asked me to explain myself. That's the kind of witness we all deserve. Lily shifted again, her body pressing lightly against my foot. She does that when the room grows quieter, as if to remind me I'm not alone inside my own thoughts. I brushed my toes against her fur, grounding, simple, enough. I wondered if he ever noticed shadows like that, if he ever sat still long enough to let one remind him of something tender, or if he only noticed them when they startled him. Some people meet memory like a closed door. Others meet it like a chair pulled up gently at the table. I suppose we each learn our way. The night outside felt clear. No rain, just a quiet January sky holding its breath. I liked that. Not every evening needs weather to justify its mood. I leaned back slightly. The sound made me smile, just a little. This chair and I have an understanding. It complains softly. I listen kindly. That's how long relationships last. I rested both hands on the table again, palms down, present, here. If you're sitting with me tonight, sweetheart, perhaps at your own table or the edge of your bed, I want you to notice something. Notice how your body knows when it's safe to rest. Notice how the night changes when you stop asking it to explain itself. You don't need answers from every shadow. Some of them are just passing through to remind you of where you've been. And some, like the one tonight, only arrive to show you how far you've come. I stayed there a while longer, with the lamp, the tea, the quiet weight of memory no longer pressing, just accompanying. The kind of company that doesn't ask for anything but your breath. And for the first time that evening, I felt something settle completely. Not nostalgia, not sadness, but a calm recognition. The past can sit at the table, as long as it remembers it no longer owns the seat. The room felt different after that. Not changed, just settled. Like when a thought finally finishes forming and leaves behind a calm you didn't know you were waiting for. I stayed seated, hands resting near the cup, fingers warm against the wood. There are moments when standing up would feel like interrupting something important. This was one of them. The shadow no longer lingered, but its absence felt intentional, as if it had done what it came to do and quietly excused itself. I've learned that some memories aren't meant to stay. They're meant to pass through, to brush your shoulder gently and remind you that you're still capable of feeling deeply without being undone. I lifted the cup again. The The tea had cooled a little, but I didn't mind. Warmth doesn't always need to be hot to be comforting. I took a slow sip, letting it rest in my mouth before swallowing, a habit I picked up years ago after realizing that rushing even the smallest comforts robs them of their purpose. At this table, with this lamp, I've learned how to slow down, not because time demands it, but because the heart does. There was a time when nights like this frightened me. Too quiet, too open. Silence used to feel like a question I wasn't ready to answer. But now, silence feels like permission. Permission to remember without reliving. Permission to feel without fixing. Permission to sit exactly where I am and know it's enough. Lily shifted once more, stretching her legs slightly before settling again. She trusts the stillness. Animals always do. They know when nothing bad is coming. I rested my heel gently against her side. She exhaled slowly in response. That sound, steady, unguarded, reminded me how healing it is to share space without expectations. I thought again of him, not sharply, not painfully, just accurately, as he was. Not as memory sometimes dramatizes him, but as he existed in ordinary moments. The way he used to sit quietly when he didn't know what to say. The way his presence filled a room, even when he was silent. I realized something then. The shadow didn't bring him back. It brought back me, the version of me who once sat across from him without knowing how strong she would become. That version of Maggie did her best with what she knew, and she deserves kindness. So does the version sitting here tonight. The lamp cast a soft glow across the table, revealing tiny scratches in the wood I've stopped noticing over the years. They don't bother me. They reassure me. Proof that life happened here. I ran my finger along one of them absent-mindedly. Smooth, worn, familiar. Nothing in this room demands perfection. That's why I keep coming back to it. If you're listening tonight, sweetheart, and something from your past has brushed against you recently, I hope you remember this. You don't owe every memory your pain. You don't owe every shadow your fear. Some memories just want acknowledgement, a nod, a breath, and then permission to leave. I stayed there, letting the night continue without adding anything to it. No fixing, no searching, just sitting, just breathing. The tea, the lamp, the table, they held their places, and so did I, ready, without rushing, for whatever the evening chose to offer next. The night had fully settled by then, not suddenly, not dramatically, just the way evenings do when they realize they're welcome. I remained at the table, exactly where I'd been all along. The lamp still glowed its familiar gold, steady and patient, as if it had no intention of leaving before I did. I adjusted my posture just slightly, not to move away from the moment, only to sit more comfortably inside it. There's a quiet honesty in staying seated. Standing feels like intention. Sitting feels like acceptance. Tonight asked for acceptance. Outside, the world continued on without announcement. No rain, no wind worth mentioning, just the soft continuation of a night that didn't need to prove itself. I noticed how calm my hands felt. No trembling, no tightness, just resting, open, unguarded. That's how I know a memory has finished speaking. The shadow from earlier never returned, but I wasn't waiting for it. Some things only need to visit once to leave their mark. I lifted the cup one last time. Only a little tea remained, barely warm, but still kind. I took a slow sip, and then I let the cup rest again, right where it belonged. At my feet, Lily shifted closer, pressing her weight gently against my ankle. A quiet reminder that I am not alone, even when my thoughts wander. I reached down without looking and rested my fingers lightly against her fur. She sighed, deep, trusting, complete. That sound grounded me more than any thought could. Animals don't revisit the past. They live in the warmth of now. And tonight, that warmth was enough. I glanced once more toward the window. The glass reflected the room back to me. The lamp, the table, my own silhouette. No shadow crossed it this time, only stillness. And in that reflection, I didn't see loss. I saw continuity. I saw a woman who has loved, remembered, and learned how to stay. There was a time when memories like this would have pulled me under. Tonight, they simply sat beside me and then stood up to leave. That's growth, I think. Not forgetting, not hardening, just learning how to breathe while remembering. If a shadow visited you tonight, sweetheart, in thought, in feeling, in silence, I hope you let it pass through gently. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to explain it. You only have to survive it with your softness intact. The lamp will stay on a little longer. The chair will hold. The night knows where to put its weight. And so do you. Rest well tonight, sweetheart.